one day in December 1774, a merchant from Semarang in central Java, named Usuk bin Abdul Qadir, set off on a trading voyage to Palembang in Sumatra. He was destined to be disappointed when he got there because business was so bad and there was no demand for his goods. So what did he do? He anchored in the Lawang River in Palembang, and he sat down and began to write a story in Malay. 20 days later, and 200 handwritten pages later, on the 12th of January 1775, he finished his story. It was called HIKAYAT Raja BABI, the story of the Pig King. Now, he told us right at the beginning exactly how he came to write it, so that's why I've been able to tell you how the story was created. And he must have taken his literary baby back with him to Semarang, because in the manuscript you find the names of 3 further owners in Semarang who were obviously father and son, and so the manuscript must have been passed down the family. And then in the early 19th century, it passed into the hands of a British official called John Crawford, who took it back to London and sold it to the British Museum in 1842. And today, it's still in the British Library. No one has actually read the story of the Pig King all the way through. But I hope that's all going to change. Up till now, a few people have been interested enough to look at it, but not to read it all the way through. But in the past year, thanks to generous support from William and Judith Bollinger, and in collaboration with the National Library of Singapore, we have digitized all the Malay manuscripts in the British Library, which means they can be read on the internet from beginning to end, gratis, anywhere in the world. And the pictures are done in very high resolution, so you can study every single last pen stroke of the scribe. So, I've been writing a blog post every week about one of these Malay manuscripts, hoping to give each its 15 minutes of fame. We have a very small but dedicated audience of readers, about 300 or 400 a week, who tune in and read my blogs. And then last November, I wrote a post on the Malay story of the Pig King. Now, we're here in Ubud in predominantly Hindu Bali, and the concept of a pig king wouldn't be out of place in the cultural landscape. After all, the pig is one of the avatars or forms of the Hindu god Vishnu. But in the rest of staunchly Muslim Indonesia and the Malay world, the concept of a story about a pig king, written in the Arabic script and in the refined classical Malay language, is quite outrageous, not to say shocking. And so this blog post has been read, retweeted, shared on Facebook more than 5,000 times. And the blog post links directly through to the digitized manuscript. Now, I know those statistics aren't quite Gangnam Style sort of impressive statistics, but the fact is that most of the people reading the blog and sharing it are Indonesian and Malay teenagers and 20-somethings who've probably never even thought about a Malay manuscript before, let alone looked at one. And so Usup's story, written in the 18th century, lives on. Why does this matter? It matters because manuscripts are authentic voices from the past, which can tell us so much about the societies in which they were created. And particularly in countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, where even today, histories are far too reliant on foreign sources. Manuscripts can give us the voices of the people who lived here, the people who were here. And so, why are we digitizing Malay manuscripts when there are others which are so much more beautiful in Indonesia? Javanese manuscripts, renowned for their beautiful illustrations and often full of humor too. Or Balinese manuscripts. Bali is, of course, home to a really rich tradition of illustrated manuscripts on palm leaf, lontar, created by the artist by finely incising the leaf with a small knife, like this manuscript of the Ramayana. So why are we digitizing Malay manuscripts? And the reason is because Malay, the language Malay, the precursor of modern Bahasa Indonesia, played a very special role in Southeast Asia over the centuries. It was the international language of trade and diplomacy, used not just in the modern nation-day states of Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei, but also in parts of the Philippines, Thailand, and Cambodia. And so even in Bali, the princes of Bali, in their communications with foreigners, would use Malay, like this letter from the Raja of Buleleng to a British official, Thomas Stamford Raffles, in 1811. So the Malay manuscripts in the British Library that we've digitized come from all over Southeast Asia. And we don't just have literary tales like the Pig King, but also historical, legal, and religious texts, as well as royal letters and documents. Highlights include, it might look very boring, but it's an incredibly important manuscript. It's the oldest known copy of the earliest Malay history, which tells of the coming of Islam to Indonesia, to the kingdom of Pasai in North Sumatra in the 13th century. This is the HIKAYAT Raja Pasai. There are also works on good governance, as relevant in the past as it is today. This is a manuscript called The Crown of Kings, the AL-SALATIN, composed in Aceh in 1603, but which became very popular throughout the archipelago, and this manuscript was written in Penang in 1824. We have early Malay travel accounts. This is a story of a visit to Calcutta by a Malay scribe called Ahmad Rijaluddin from Kedah in 1810. And in this manuscript, he fills it with his impressions of Calcutta. But the thing he spends most time on describing, he just can't tear himself away from, is descriptions of the enormous variety of courtesans in the city, big and little, short and tall, fat and thin, ugly and beautiful. He swears he only glimpsed them from outside the windows, but he can't help himself from coming back to the subject over and over again. And even royal letters and documents contain so many nuggets of fascinating information from the past. The letter from the Raja of Buleleng I showed you earlier ends with the list of the gifts he's sending Raffles. He sends a black horse and a 5-year-old slave boy called Ketut Jobeling. So these manuscripts really do speak to us from the past, or rather they would do if we could read them. Because as you can see, Malay used to be written in a form of the Arabic script called Jawi, which is hardly in use nowadays. But the Magna Carta was written in Latin, barely understood even in Europe these days, and that doesn't diminish its international significance. And so there is a real crucial need to continue studying the languages and scripts of Southeast Asia's past in order to unlock the treasures of its history. But there are ways of appreciating the manuscripts even if you can't actually read the text. They can be appreciated for their artistry. These beautiful swirls and flourishes of the pen were created by a scribe at the Palace of Ternate in Maluku, and it's part of a letter he wrote on behalf of the Sultan of Ternate in 1802. And the twirls and flourishes stretch legibility to its limits, but show off his mastery with the pen. At the top of royal letters like this, we usually find the seal of the sender. And seals from Southeast Asia acted as the name cards of their day. In fact, you could call them very early examples of corporate branding, because the identity of the owner of the seal was condensed into a very small space in the middle, written in Arabic script, set within a beautiful decorative frame, often which was so distinctive in shape that you could tell who and where it was from, just from the iconography alone. Such as the seal of the Sultans of Aceh. For over 250 years, the Sultans of Aceh all had seals in the same basic shape, with the name of the reigning sultan in the middle, surrounded by 8 smaller circles with names of his ancestors. And this was inspired by the seal of the Mughal emperors of India. And so to end, I'd like to focus on an example of artistic virtuosity from Aceh, the westernmost part of Indonesia. Sometime in the 1830s, an anonymous Achenese scribe and artist sat down to commence his devout task of decorating a copy of the Holy Qur'an. He designed, drew, and coloured in 3 exquisite pairs of illuminated frames to mark the beginning, middle, and end of the text. But the Qur'an is traditionally divided into 30 parts of equal length, each called a juz, and this is to enable the holy book to be read easily in equal portions every day over the course of 1 full month of 30 days. And so each juz is normally marked in the margin with an ornament, as you can see here, and there are some other very beautiful examples. Now, each juz can also be further subdivided into 2, 4, or 8 parts of equal length, so that when you see the element of the Qur'an for recitation that day, you can do some in the morning, some at midday, some in the evening, and at night. And these divisions of a juz are in themselves marked in the margin with lovely ornamental medallions. Now, in this manuscript, all the medallions are composed of the same basic model, a series of concentric circles with a very limited palette of just red, yellow, black, and the white of the paper, it's called reserved white, manipulated as a 4th colour of the palette. And there are over 200 of these little medallions in this manuscript, and every single one is different. So what a feast of inspiration for artists and graphic designers today. Now, all the manuscripts I've shown you from the collections of the British Library are online, and I really hope that you feel inspired or excited to browse the website and have a look and explore these amazing authentic voices and creative visions from Indonesia's rich and multi-layered past. Thank you very much.